is up, guys? So unfortunately today my reception does not seem to be at its best. So to avoid running the risk of recording something that you can only have here, I will go ahead and produce a separate video, present the story that I wanted to present yesterday, but I just wanted to let it marinate for another day. Yesterday, I was out on a date. During the date, we decided that we would do some Ubering. One of our Uber deliveries took us to an Italian restaurant that is kind of on the high-end side. And when we parked, I was rambling about something to my date, just something in general. I don't even remember what it was. And then as soon as he gets out of the car, or I should say attempts to get out of the car, there is a woman 2 parking spots away, and she just started rambling away. I mean, you guys think that I talk? This lady had a lot to say, and she had a lot of stuff to say about God and how she recently had gotten laid off and that she feels the great power of God circulating through her pretty much, and that she finds herself in need, and she had come from the neighboring city. She had a bad experience or something at the restaurant that we have in this city is the same as the one on that other city, and then she just decided that she wasn't going to give them an opportunity, and she just said that she somehow ended up in this city because in her quest of making her situation better, apparently she feels like she had a calling to be at this place at this time, and she doesn't know how it's gonna happen or what's gonna happen to make her ends meet. But because she's laid off, she was talking about how she has a car payment that is due on Tuesday, which would be tomorrow, and that no matter what, she's just trying to make it. And she just kept rambling and rambling about God and how, you know, she feels taken care of by him and doesn't know what is gonna happen. You know, the same narrative that a lot of religious people tend to carry out, which nothing wrong with that. I mean, if that's what you feel flow through you, then you do what you gotta do, because it has happened to me. I have gone through things that I cannot explain scientifically, so I like to call it a spiritual thing that is happening to me, because since I do not follow any religion, I cannot claim to be a Christian, Buddhist, or any of those things, because I do not actively practice nor follow the words of the book. But because the concept of spiritualism has been explained to me in a way that makes sense and I can relate to, that's why I decide to describe it as such. So this lady's rambling went on for what felt like 7 minutes. And to be completely honest with you, I don't want to dismiss this person feeling like trying to minimize her situation, but I did not believe her. After the first 3 minutes, it was starting to get weird, and I was like, come on, lady, go ahead and say what it is that you want, because I can just tell that you're babbling about all this stuff because you're getting ready to ask for something. So I did not believe her. I kept looking at her. I examined her car. I looked at her. I examined the car. I looked at the setting that we were at, and then I looked at her and I listened to her, and she was incredibly hyper. And then I started breaking down what was happening. The first 5 minutes of your narrative seemed to be an attempt at grabbing your attention. You were focused on how your life is becoming difficult, and I guess you needed to have that preamble to get ready to ask for something. Nothing wrong with that. I remember a time when I was homeless and I was with my mother. We were struggling together, and we were looking for ways to get help. We didn't go directly to people, but we did a little bit of quick research based on points that we could be at. Like, I used to have my 3rd generation iPod, and I could log into Wi-Fi and look up for information. I was looking for ways in which we could get food for minimal to no cost. We discovered a soup kitchen, and then I was like, you know what? This works. Let's go visit, Mom. You just never know. It happened to be part of some church that also had a thrift store. So we very humbly went up there. We had never been to a soup kitchen before. We didn't know what to expect. But it was among the most beautiful experiences that we ever had, based on the people that we were able to meet. We survived. We did our stuff. We ate. We were comfortable. That's what mattered. We just carried on with our lives. And then on other days prior to it getting to that point where we were getting very, very tight to where it felt like we might be beginning to suffocate, since we too had car payments to make, since my car at the time was new. That's when we were like, what are the places that we can go buy food for no more than $5? And then McDonald's used to do that dollar menu thing. So we pretty much ate McDonald's for like a 2-week period. It was not the best time of my life for me. I could just feel it. My stomach was just breaking down like crazy. But at the end of the day, we survived, and we did it mostly alone until we were able to make the next move that led us to eventually building up to where we are at today. This lady, I guess this got my gears grinding on some journalistic approach that I wish I could do if I had resources. Maybe someone out there has done it and I don't know how to look for it, but it is, how do people react based on who is the beggar? Because yesterday the circumstance was I was with a date. It was me and him. He was the driver. He was closer to her. We were kind of the only folks isolated in the vicinity, and other people were exiting the restaurant. And I do not know if she was there already or if she just popped up out of the blue. Like, it was amazing to me. Like, where did you come from? I thought it was going to be a lady that, because it is Sunday and maybe due to the political landscape lately, she just wanted to like ramble and preach about stuff, because I get that on occasion. I may be randomly at some shop and then someone pulls me over and they go, you know, you should try to vote Democrat this year because we gotta get those crazy people off the White House. And I'm like, okay, you are welcome to your political views, but do not try to speak to me about what my interests are if you do not know me. Things like that. I thought about it as, I want to know, had she tried to make a move on other people? Did she get rejected? When it's a female beggar, what are people's reactions? Are you more likely to give, or are you less likely to give? What made her make the move? Was it because they happen to be the same race? Was it because she just knows that men tend to be givers more often? Could it be that because of a race factor, if you are a member of a specific race, you are more likely to be involved in religious practices, so you knowing that will make you more likely to make a move, a positive move on this person? So I was coming up with the following thoughts, and I'm going to try to structure them now a little better, now that I sort of gave you a backstory. Let's break it down by the spiritual aspect of the situation. My date, of course, was saying, well, I'm in a position where I can give. I'm not tight on money. She's asking for food. I'm gonna give it to her. And I'm like, good job. Be a giver. It is good to give. You never know what the person is going through. And they're asking for something that's actually good, which is food. It's odd that if you're a person who's experiencing a necessity, you're going to a fancy restaurant for that. Why couldn't you go somewhere where the menu is a little cheaper and people are more likely to give, and maybe you'll receive help a little faster? But at the same time, let's assume that everybody goes to cheap fast food places because they're economically tight anyway. Maybe if you go to a less fancy place, you are less likely to be given something because the clientele there already struggles. But that is not necessarily true, because that is sounding like I'm saying that people with high incomes do not get junk food. I personally also think that maybe she tries to pull at people's strings spiritually because it happened to be a Sunday. She was dressed nicely. Also, you pick something that is important. You select this narrative and you try to present it with the will of God accompanying you, in addition to the fact that when you lose your job, it is a scary situation to be in. and you get desperate and you start looking for help. Maybe she is completely alone, like me. I have no family except for my mom. Maybe she is single, or she recently went through a divorce. I don't know, but those factors would be interesting, because I just want to know how this person hit rock bottom. Losing your job is a big deal, I get it. At the same time, being a member of this community in a city, it is very easy for you to get assistance. So if you're concerned about your transportation, there's public transportation all the time, cheap and accessible. So if you find that your car payment is too difficult for you to bear at this time, you might need to consider selling it or surrendering it. I have thought that if something happens to me or something happens to my job to where I can no longer go to it or I lose it altogether, the first thing to go is going to be my fucking car. But sometimes I think about it as, let me think back to a time in which my car was actually my home. So I think the first thing to go would be my apartment. But fortunately, I have a backup plan to where that doesn't need to be the extreme that I reach, considering that my options are different from hers. She does not have that option, maybe. Let's assume that her story was entirely the truth, which, unfortunately, I don't believe she was telling the truth. But just because I perceived it that way due to preconceived notions that I already have, doesn't mean that I'm wrong, doesn't mean that I'm right. I will never know if I was wrong or right. But I just thought that the whole thing was too random, and when someone babbles on for too long, it makes me suspicious. Like, just be straight to the point. Be like, hey, I am a believer in God. I have faith. I am going through this difficult time. I recently lost my job. I am desperate. I'm not sure if I'm going to make the car payment on Tuesday. But as of right now, I'm just trying to eat something. My date said, does it have to be something from here? And she said, no, it could be from anywhere. And then he was like, well, I'm in the middle of an Uber right now, but I guess I can hook you up with something here from this restaurant. And then at least she was open to options, but I thought it was odd that she wasn't really presenting a solution, I guess, for that. So what could she have done? With that said, the moment that you know that someone is in the middle of a job, you try to not disrupt them. Because if I knew that someone is in the middle of doing a job, I would not dare to interfere with their flow. I think that's wrong. I think that's rude. And just because my life is messed up doesn't mean that I can go around messing up other people's flow and other people's lives. I just thought from that perspective that it's a tricky situation. I don't know if she was aware, assuming. That's me trying to think of her as being manipulative of the situation. But again, maybe she was completely innocent and she was telling the complete truth, and I'm just someone who's cynical. And while we are mentioning the note of cynical, let's go to the cynical side of this, which I mentioned the social aspect of the situation, which was she knows that a man is more likely to provide, especially if she is a woman, and women are perceived as people who are inherently vulnerable. So the cynical side of me at some point was like, wow, she was able to persuade my date into giving her something. I'm thinking, did someone just steal my date right in front of my face? I don't give a damn, but I just think that it's odd. Because that place was not necessarily lacking people, but I guess she would not dare to go into the building and attempt to solicit. She was saying that she believes that she can pull up her account and she has like maybe $50 from being part of the club or something. And I'm thinking, why did you not investigate that? She kept saying, I'm not sure how the manager is going to react to me saying that. And I'm like, what you need to do is, if you're in a situation where you feel like you are needy, you will exploit all of your other options before you determine that you are needy. When she said that, that's when I started to doubt her and not believe her. Because if it were me, if I think that I have some credit left on my club at this restaurant, I will first go up to management and be like, hey, can you check my status? Can you check my account to see if I have any rewards pending to be redeemed? And then the manager or the cashier or whomever is going to say, sure, hang on one second. What is your name? What is your phone number? Or however it is that they look you up in the system, and they can confirm it. But this lady had not even tried that, which leads me to believe that that was completely bogus. and she just tried to roll with it under the excuse of, I'm not sure how the manager is going to react. How do you know that the manager is going to react negatively? Have you been here before? Are you a regular and you give problems, and that's the reason why you're fearing management now? But if you're really that concerned about your affordability of this place, how about if you go to McDonald's? Again, there were so many options if you're trying to eat, but for some reason, you had to really stick to this one restaurant. She kept saying, is that too much to ask for? If you feel compelled to ask if that's too much to ask for, it's because you know that for the average person, that is too much to ask for. But you did not try to be like, hey, maybe after your delivery, could you possibly come back to the parking lot, and that way we can drive to this mutual restaurant that you can afford? I would come up with solutions, but this lady was not coming up with any solutions. And that's the second strike. Well, this would be the third strike. The first strike was she was babbling too long and not getting straight to the point that she was going to ask for help. Because my date was getting up to head over to the restaurant finally to get his job done, and that's when she said, is there any way I can get something to eat? Like, her tone changed ever so slightly, and I am good at perceiving that stuff because I train my ears, and I also happen to study how people change their tone and sound. But she was speaking so fast, and all of a sudden her tone changed and it sounded a little aggressive, and I'm thinking, oh wow, maybe she thought that we were going to walk out on her because all we kept saying was amen, yeah, the Lord is great, amen. So that's another strike that made me be like, I don't believe her. If I think about it from a religious point of view, yesterday was Sunday. It was Sunday evening. People are out with their families, just doing stuff. You grab someone's attention by speaking about God and how you just somehow ended there. Like, some people tend to really use that a lot, which is, I feel like I'm here for a reason. I ended up here for a reason. And I'm thinking, well, some people end up in certain places at certain times because they calculate and they plan for that. I believe that stuff that's not planned is stuff that is truly spontaneous, and you could not have controlled that factor. She could control the factor that she was there at a time when restaurants are known to be busy, which, I mean, if you're someone in need and you're intelligent, you will have those facts in the back of your mind and you will try to exploit them to your advantage. But again, so many places that you can possibly go to, and it had to be this fancier restaurant. But anyways, this is where the true point of the video comes in, which is the critical aspect of it that I was mentioning earlier. If it were a guy completely by himself, I'm sure that you still would have asked. If it were a guy with kids, would you still have tried to ask? Because now it's a bigger family, they got stuff to do. Usually you don't go after people who have kids because you know that the struggle is real anyway. Or maybe she doesn't have any kids and she would have no idea. But also, what if it would have been me? Let's say that I would have been the one sitting in the driver's seat getting off to pick up for a delivery. Would she have asked me? I highly doubt it for some reason. Or maybe would she have said it in plural? Because her entire discourse was directed at my date. And then the only time that I was in the picture was to say, y'all have a good night. And I'm like, oh wow, yay, I'm not a portrait. I'm actually living and breathing and I am here. What if I would have been a woman with kids? Would you have asked me for help? I just thought that the entire episode was random, and that's when I said, you know what? Are women beggars more privileged? And I want to say that they are, because I find that no one will think twice about giving you a hand because you are perceived as someone in the community that is inherently more needy, inherently vulnerable. So hopefully you guys enjoyed my story. I know I was kind of all over the place, but let me know what you think. Have you ever asked yourself this question? Do you know of someone or maybe a channel or a video that answers my question of someone running an experiment of me being the beggar as a female and then a male beggar and the results that we get? Or being the person who gets asked? But the person who gets asked would be a little tricky, because how can I make myself the controlled group or the beggar the controlled group, how does the beggar know to ask me because I'm trying to conduct an experiment? See what I mean? So that's why I truly want to know if someone has done this already. That way I don't have to do it myself. But I thought it was interesting because I have always wanted to go over this, and I know that I have made a begging topic before, but I hadn't really broken down in this way. So I think yesterday's episode was what I needed to put my mind together on this topic. Don't be afraid to say, Zam, maybe what's happening is your bias of you saw that it was a female and you were on a date, so maybe you're overreacting to it. Hey, feel free to say that. The answer to that is no, I didn't feel any type of way because I don't have to feel jealous about something that I don't have. I don't have that kind of malice. I think my curse, but at the same time is a blessing, is that I love to think. I like to peel the layers of something. Even if there's nothing significant going on, I like to explore that stuff. But there are people out there who actually try to explore something in depth with malice. Like they're trying to find the most minimal thing, the most minimal wrongdoing to use it against you and to try to attack you. And I don't do that. All I do is ask in the name of learning and researching. My date was getting a little defensive. He was like, I was in the position to give, so I just gave. You know, not a problem. I don't care if she was lying. She could have been saying the complete truth. And then I also said, or she could have been lying. And I'm not saying that it matters. At the end of the day, you're not going to lose your house. You're not going to lose your car. You're not going to lose your job. You're not going to not eat tomorrow because you fed someone else. I don't care what you do, especially if you're in a position of giving. But as someone who likes to explore social occurrences, this is what was going through my mind while the whole episode was going down. There are some people out there who do not have the ability to think. And I like the fact that I can think a lot, extensively, and sustain it for prolonged periods of time. I'm not sure if in the future this energy and the capacity that I have to break stuff down is going to be there. So while it's here, I am going to embrace it. And if you want no part on it, just let me know and I don't get you involved. But just know that I am not going to stop doing something that I love, which is thinking critically, just because you're intimidated by it. Another thing I thought was odd was that after my date is like, sure, I'll hook you up. That wasn't the end of it. It's like she just kept rambling and talking and talking and talking, and I'm like, she has a lot to just say. So when my date returned, I was like, so what was her story? And then he really didn't say anything. He just kept it vague, and I'm like, well, if she was able to divulge it to you, I'm pretty sure she wouldn't have a problem with you divulging it to me. But I wish I would have known the details, because maybe that would have helped me at presenting this story with more possibilities, better angles. But because my information was limited, I have been deprived of details that could have possibly made this story have a better flow. So now all I have is the opinion that I formed and whatever she said in her 7-minute preamble, but that rest of information is just lost to me. But it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, I feel like I fulfilled my goal, which was to present the story and break it down in as many segments as I can, and hopefully induce some thoughts and get a conversation going on this matter. Alright guys, I would love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you soon.